Hello, and welcome to The Security Strategist. My name is Steffen, and I will be your host for today's podcast. I am the Vice President of Research with Enterprise Management Associates, an analyst firm that examines how companies manage their IT infrastructure from the data center to the user environment and into the cloud. And I focus on primarily all things information security and nerd. Today, I have my bearded brother, Nathaniel Quist, Cloud Threat Intelligence Manager from Palo Alto Networks, and we're going to be talking a little bit about CDR and its benefits. I will tell you, I know that this is a podcast, you can't see us. For those of you that know me, you know that my beard goes down to the floor, and let me tell you, my buddy Q, he's right there with me. So, Nathaniel, great to have you on the podcast today. Really looking forward to our conversation. We've been hearing a lot about the whole new DR, right? This whole idea of cloud detection and response. Tell me a little bit about what it is and how does it relate to the other DRs? What is it like XDR? What is it, what makes it different and why are we talking about it today?
Yeah, definitely. First off, Chris, my beard can't compare to yours. Yours is just, yours have the superior beard. But thank you so much. I appreciate it. Beards are a way of life, right? So
you got it.
So, a little bit. You said I'm the manager of the Cloud Threat Intelligence team for Palo Alto Cortex. Work really heavily with UM42, very focused on threat intelligence, looking at who, how, and why, and what people are attacking within cloud environments. So when we start thinking about XDR, there's a lot of different components that fit into XDR. You have endpoint detection, you have network detection, and there's a number of pieces that fit into it. So how are we going to talk about XDR or EDR systems or network systems within a cloud infrastructure? So XDR is visibility. It is the ability to not only detect, but also to respond and also prevent attacks happening in environments. And so bringing that type of visibility and, telemetry into cloud environments is a huge increase. And it's a big point that we should really focus on in cloud environments.
Well, we're not doing it now, right? And that's the biggest problem. I mean, and I say we're not doing it now. We're doing it kind of okay. But I don't know that we've really been focusing much on it. And I'm really happy to see that Palo Alto and others are starting to focus on this CDR term, this idea that, yes, it is important to take advantage of the cloud. So if this is really the direction that we're moving, which I agree, I think this is the direction that we need to be moving in the grand scheme of things. Talk to me a little bit about what's going on today. How are most companies approaching cloud security? Talk to me about some of the problems and challenges that they're having and what we can expect how to solve those in the future.
Yeah, definitely. So you've mentioned previously that 10%, 1 out of 10 organizations still believe that cloud service providers own and control security in cloud environments.
I'll share this stat too. You probably heard it on this podcast before. It's something like 7 to 8%. And I've surveyed literally thousands of people, and 7 to 8% fully believe that their cloud service provider is directly, wholly, and absolutely responsible for their security. And if you're a bearded brother like Q and I are, you know that that's not true. There's something called the shared responsibility model, and it's something that we're trying to talk about more and more. And it's one of the fundamental problems. People truly don't understand that. They don't understand the shared responsibility model, but they also don't understand that the cloud is not inherently automatically secure just because you dump your stuff up to it.
Yeah, definitely. The key piece of that shared responsibility model is the cloud service provider owns the hardware, and they make sure the hardware is up to date and that you can run your applications on it. But anything above hardware, and it comes to cloud applications, when it comes to users, when it comes to identity access management credentials, that's the customer's responsibility. And it's the customer's responsibility to ensure that it is configured properly, free of misconfigurations, don't have vulnerabilities, ensure that the users that are operating or the service accounts that are operating in that cloud environment, have the permissions they need and only the permissions they need to perform those functions. So that part of the shared responsibility, the actual operation of those cloud systems, that is that customer's responsibility.
Absolutely. You hear about it all the time. You hear about this breach here and there on, Azure Cloud, Google Cloud, AWS Cloud, and it's things like take and secure your S3 bucket with a password. I mean, I know that sounds unbelievably easy, but it's still the truth. You wouldn't believe how many examples of public storage out there are not protected by something as simple as a username and password. I'm not even talking about anything MFA and blah, 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 and so on and so forth. That's not even what I'm talking about. I'm talking about basic as you have on your iPhone right now kind of security isn't applied to your core IP that is located out in the cloud. And that, to me, as a security professional, that is not only sickening, but amazing that people don't understand that.
No, well, certainly taking this into research that we've taken. So Unit 42, we have a cloud threat report. We've published 7 of them over a yearly basis. In volumes 7, we actually found that 83% of cloud infrastructure, cloud VMs, EC2 instances in your AWS or your VM systems in GCP or Azure, we found that 83% of them had hard-coded identity access management credentials, which are the keys to that cloud platform, hard-coded inside of that virtual machine. That means that it's in that hidden directory, that .aws or .gcloud or .azure /config or credentials. They're most likely a credential for that cloud platform, for that cloud instance that's running. You can take that just a step farther, and we're finding hard-coded credentials inside of repositories, code repositories like GitHub, GitLab, or your Vault systems. We're finding 85% of repos have hard-coded credentials into it. So even if that initial layer is secure, it's that SecDevOps system underneath it that still most likely has those keys to that larger cloud environment exposed in that system.
Yeah, absolutely. We talked obviously a little bit about, how companies are really approaching their cloud security today. Talk to me a little bit about how they are shifting left, and talk a little bit about posture management and why some of those things are relevant to how we need to be securing, or how companies are securing their cloud environments today.
Yeah, so your cloud security posture management systems, or CSPMs, they are dedicated to ensuring that the infrastructure, the initial configuration, the initial resources that you are using to run your production environments are free of misconfigurations or vulnerabilities. They, alerting, in a lot of cases, like in the case of Palo Alto, they actually, provide auto remediation capabilities and steps to say, hey, you have this exposed EC2 instance or this exposed VM, you have this exposed serverless function that is publicly exposed. Here's a warning. Let's see if we can fix that. Your infrastructure is code systems that you have to create that infrastructure from kind of a script perspective. Those are free of misconfigurations, vulnerabilities as well, to ensure that what you're putting into the cloud initially is secure. So what we should think about is posture management is that foundational layer of security. It is that layer that we ride upon, that we may ensure that the rest of our security system has a good platform. We have good visibility. We have free of misconfigurations, free of vulnerabilities, at least known vulnerabilities. 0 days show up like Okta a couple of weeks ago, or like Ivanti. Those are cloud platforms, and vulnerabilities can still exist and still spur, show up at Friday at 4:00 and we spend our weekend trying to figure out what's going on. So, those things happen. But posture is that foundation. It's where we start, right?
Yeah, absolutely. You get to talk with all kinds of people. I do too, obviously, every day. Talk to me about what's really going on out there. Talk to me about what, some of the scenarios that you're seeing. Talk to me about what customers are seeing from cloud security, and then cross-apply that and tell me what you think some of the best approaches to deal with some of those scenarios are. Let's talk about 2 or 3 of them. I mean, there's a lot of people out there that are looking for those real examples, and you and I both have examples that we can share where we're seeing things in the cloud that, my goodness, let's just join reality here and figure out a way to get those things secured.
Okay, so we released a blog just a few weeks ago, and it's a large-scale extortion campaign, so ransomware in a cloud environment. And where it came from, where attackers were able to identify that organizations were exposing API endpoints that also had an exposed environment variable file. An environment variable file typically is how that endpoint system will communicate with other pieces of its backend. Like if it's an API system, it's probably communicating to a database. So it needs credentials in order to communicate back to that database. So an environment variable holds sensitive information like authentication or identity access management credentials, things like that. Should never, ever, ever be exposed, right? So again, a posture management tool will be able to say, hey, you have an exposed environment variable file. Let's lock that down. So anyway, these actors were able to identify, they targeted over 110,000 domains. So a very large swath of systems. They were able to harvest or collect over 90,000 credentials, authentication tokens, access tokens, IAM credentials, over 7,000 identity access management credentials, and specifically for cloud environments. Over 1,200 organizations were susceptible to this. Thankfully, we were able to work with the cloud service providers and notify those customers that we found had these particular leaks, and they were able to take action and remediate those pieces. But it still meant that a few organizations were held for ransom. But you think of the staggering amount, 110,000 domains were targeted, 90,000 individual credentials were taken, 1,200 organizations were impacted by this particular event. It's a significant breach. And there's things that, from a runtime perspective, we could be able to prevent that from a very, very early stage when that system was first connected to, or those systems where those files were initially exfiltrated off of those particular, endpoints. We should have been able to see that a whole lot faster.
Yeah, it always comes back to understanding and continually trying to improve. One of the topics that I always mention and talk about is cybersecurity maturity. And there is nobody that's out of 5, right? If on a scale from 1 to 5, with 1 being, brand new, babe in the woods, and 5 being, the perfect black box that nobody can get into, nobody can get out of, nobody's out of 5. And you don't want to be at a 5 anyway. That's crazy. But even those companies that are at strong 3s or 4s, it's really important to realize that there's always room for improvement. Technologies change, attacks change, whatever have you. And I'll put my CIO hat on. I used to be one many moons ago. And I'm here to tell you that these are the kind of attacks that you don't really think about. You can have the greatest security apparatus in the entire universe, and you're still not thinking about the things that you don't think about. I mean, I know that sounds circular, but it's really the truth. You're worrying about, identity and lateral movement in your networks and these things. And yeah, there's great solutions for that. I can identify that. I'm going to deal with that. But these other things that you think are taken care of that you just don't realize, or the technology has changed since you implemented and you don't realize that it's being stored there, or whatever have you, those are the things that drive me a little bit nuts. The great news is that the technology to combat some of those things is also evolving to help you take and solve those problems. And that's, at an essence, that's really what we're talking about when it comes to CDR. You could have the greatest world-class SIEM solution that's out there. And again, kudos to you. I think that's wonderful. And those things need to evolve. And your environment needs to evolve. And my friends at Palo Alto Networks are going to help you evolve that as well. This is not a sales pitch. We're here to talk about the technologies, but the reality of it is that taking and working with a trusted vendor that is doing innovative things, I think is critically important, and it will help your cybersecurity maturity.
100%, without a doubt. Thank you so much for saying that, Chris. If we're ever going to really make true impacts in cloud security and trying to improve our security, the preventing attacks, we have to have a way to have visibility or to gain telemetry from these cloud systems. And CDR is the most effective when we have visibility in those systems. I worked with SIEM for a very long time, and you could have every single log in the world dumping into it. And there's a couple things with SIEMs, you have to have them configured right and all that fun stuff. But if you don't have the data in any way, you'll never see the attack. So then you get those, terrible false positives where it's like, we don't know if something were even supposed to happen in any way whatsoever. It's just like, I don't know. And, how do we combat that avenue? The cloud, just as a standard basis, is if anybody has looked at a cloud audit log from AWS or Google Security Center or anything like that, I mean, it floods you with data.
Oh, yeah,
there is a massive amount of data. And how do you pull out those very specific alerts that you're looking for to pull that out? But that's just from the cloud side. But what about the cloud runtime instance, the cloud compute instance, that API engine, that front end, web server? That's still being connected on a daily basis, and we need to get that telemetry off of those systems.
Yeah, it's the common complaint from the board of directors, not from a CISO, not even from a CIO, but a board of directors. You have a breach of some kind of incident, and you triage the incident, so on and so forth. And again, 99 times out of 100, you go back and look at the 12 billion logs that you have leading up to the incident, and log number 847,436,312 was the log that would have told you that, oh yeah, you're going to have a problem today. Sure. Okay. I got that. So I missed 1 out of 12 billion. And, I'm exaggerating those numbers, but I'm not exaggerating those numbers. We've all been in that situation where you're seeing that kind of stuff, where you are missing that one piece of corollary threat intelligence that would have been the summation to all that problems. And again, sometimes it's you get too much data and you don't know how to deal with it. Sometimes you're not getting the right data and you don't have the ability to react to it. So again, Q, I totally agree with you. And that's why I'm really excited to talk more about this.
Just double hit on that one real fast, where, it is the log or the scarcity of a log of importance. And I don't want to scare anybody whatsoever, but this really validates the CDR angle along with the cloud posture angle. Is if we look at cloud ransomware, specifically like Muddled Libra or Scattered Spider of that nature, a ransomware attack in a cloud behaves and looks very differently than a ransomware attack on-prem.
Absolutely.
If you're on-prem, you will see your DLP system or your EDR system on your on-prem system say file encrypted, file encrypted, file encrypted, file encrypted. You'll have a whole string of those types of alerts in your security tool. In a cloud environment, they're not encrypting individual files. They are data syncing the entire cloud storage repo or bucket into another third-party environment. So you get one log, you get data sync or data mirror log. And that's the one log that you get. So if you're looking through your millions of logs, you're looking for one, not potentially thousands in those systems. So that's where, a CDR platform is able to look at that endpoint, see if there was ever a outbound network communication pairing that instance with an actual cloud log in one platform for cloud and, that cloud runtime environment. It really allows us to increase the potential of seeing that event, that alert, and then also having the ability to stop it before it even gets to that point. So it's a very important point to make with CDR.
Yeah, no, great point. I really appreciate that. Let's talk a little. I know that we're running out of time. Let's talk a little bit about some of the key security gaps that we identified, and then we'll wrap it up today.
Okay, yeah, definitely. So key security points are identity. Identity is the target in cloud environments. Identity access management credentials, the overly permissive nature of identity access management credentials. Sometimes a credential doesn't need administrator rights, right? It needs just the rights it needs to perform particular cloud function. We're looking at how SOC can use security tools more effectively to not only detect, but also to prevent and to respond, give themselves more time to come up with a game plan of how to handle a particular threat. SOCs need more visibility in cloud environments, and they need more control to perform forensic intelligence, pull those snapshots back, things of those natures. CDR fits that mold really, really, really effectively. So telemetry, identity access management, we need to secure those things and then, give ourselves options within the SOC. Those are key points that we need to address.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. And I look really I know that we have a couple more that we're doing in this series. I really look forward to digging into those with you. We can obviously talk about this all day. It has been a fantastic conversation. I really appreciate you coming on to the podcast today. Thank you everyone for listening. I hope you took a lot away from this podcast. Like I mentioned, we're going to be doing a couple more in this series. Definitely worth listening to Q and understanding some of the expertise where it comes to CDR. If you're interested in more information about what we talked about, head over to paloaltonetworks.com/CDR so you can have a better understanding of cloud detection and response. We'll be back soon with another podcast in our podcast series. Until then, make certain you subscribe to this podcast on all the major platforms and follow the conversation on our socials, EM360 Tech on X and LinkedIn. And for more daily great content, head over to em360tech.com. Again, Q, thanks for joining me today. Really great conversation and look forward to continuing the discussion soon.